Hey, everybody, welcome to the Elseworlds Exchange. I'm Sal, and I'm joined today by Donny Cates. Donny, welcome to the show, dude.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I figured I should jump in considering that we're approaching the end of Donuary, I
Yes, we
suppose it
are at
is.
the end.
Right.
Yes, the end of
Yeah.
January, an impromptu thing that happened on our show Back Issues where I wanted to talk about Thor, and I thought about talking about Thor, and I'm like, all of your Marvel, everything that your Marvel stuff has been over the last couple of years has all been kind of connected in some form or
Yeah.
another.
Right. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
all these callbacks, which is distinctly Marvel, and it's really cool, and I
Mhm.
love it. But since the show has blossomed into we do like one story at a time, I was like, well, if I talk about Thor, I can't not talk about Thanos, and I can't not talk about Cosmic Ghost Rider, and I can't not talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that, and the other thing. So it just went to, well, I guess we'll do like 3 books in a row. And I abandoned the whole plan. I was like, well, we'll do, because we did Silver Surfer Black a while back, which like,
Mm.
God. But we did that years ago, because but it's distinctly a King in Black tie-in just leading up to it because Null is the main
Kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
antagonist of that
Yeah.
book. Right. But we thankfully I have the oversized edition because like holy crap. And you went to college with
Yeah. It's
Tradmore
beautiful.
and got to make
I
this
did.
like
Yeah.
incredible opus, which even irrespective of King in Black, you still can enjoy as like a pure, beautiful Silver Surfer story.
Well, thank
But
you.
since we did that already, I was like, hey, we can do King in Black instead because I know people have been asking us to do it since it came out.
Well,
But
cool,
yeah,
man.
and that yeah. So it just became this thing where we were like, hey, let's just do 3 in a row. We actually wrapped up. I was like, because okay, so Donuary was just,
Mhm.
well, we'll do 3 books, and I was like, well, February's a short month. We'll just do. We've never done that before, and I
Mm.
was like, maybe I should stop because like at King in Black because like how big can you get? Because we already did God Country and we already did Silver Surfer Black, but
Sure.
but after King in Black, I there are other books that you've done that we can talk about that I'd love to explore on the show, but I want, as you know, as a comic book writer, and especially in like Marvel, because of like
Mm.
the Stanley edict of every comic somebody's first. Uh,
Sure.
every episode is somebody's first, and
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
some folk are going to catch the episode of Thor and they're not going to know about Donuary, and I want them to be able
Right.
to like know about that book irrespective of the tethering of everything else. I don't want to at some point be like, oh, and here's another one. No, we're doing this
Sure.
book and it's really
Yeah.
cool and we're hyper focusing on that. So yeah, that's why we did that. I know
Yeah, and a
it
lot of
turned
my
into me
books,
answering
like
questions.
you said, like they tend to connect. I tend to somewhat weave my own little story, my own little corner of the universe, and so yeah, everything's kind of tied together loosely in some sort of a loose, grand tapestry that somewhat looks like I know what I'm doing. Sometimes I guess.
Well, well, and why not, right? Because like
Yeah, right.
it's your opportunity. You're like,
Mhm.
because you kind of just like exploded onto the scene, but I know it was hard work and it was grueling work, and you've done a whole bunch of indie books that led up to you being Donny Cates, and
Yeah, sure, yeah.
uh but I can imagine that you're given an opportunity where they say like, hey, take Inhumans and do whatever you want with it, or hey, take Venom and do whatever you want with it, and you're like, well, I'm
Mhm.
gonna make it like intrinsically mine, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
brand it by being like, this is important and it's mine and it's big, and like, why wouldn't you connect it all together?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, it's just I try to, because like most of my books, for the most part, at least my Marvel books are. I tend to like write every book as if it's an event book. Like it's always the biggest, craziest thing that's happening. It's always a world shaking, huge thing. And
Yes.
when you write like that, when you tend to like kind of skew into that lane, you can very easily start to step on other people's plans. And so I'm very conscious of not trying to mess up anyone else's plans. And so sticking to my own little universe and sticking to like only referencing kind of my own stuff and like playing with my own characters and stuff kind of walls me off in a way that allows me to tell these huge stories while not getting in anyone's way. And so it it's it's lazy mostly. I
I mean,
just have to research my own books instead of other
it,
people's.
but I think it comes from a perspective of considerance. You're like, yeah, if you want to play in it, you can, but it's not going to
Yeah.
derail what you're doing over there, you know?
Yeah, and that's always been kind of my edict with like with event books and stuff that I do. Like for the most part, a lot of my events didn't begin life as like world or like universe spanning company line wide crossovers. They were more or less just like story arcs that I had planned. I tend to plan way far out. I When I first turned in my outline for Venom, it had everything all the way up to King in Black, and it was like this like 5 year huge plan. And
Yeah.
I was like in the summits talking about this, and Scotty Young still makes fun of me for like my 2 hour presentation of my Venom plans. And like Scotty would stop me and say like, hold on, the thing that you're talking about right now, the story, when does that take place? And I'd be like 2021, and he'd be like, okay, good luck. Like, that's
Yeah.
weird that you're assuming. And like, I just didn't know any better. I just thought that that's how everything was always planned. And so like going back as far as like Thanos wins and then like Doctor Strange and stuff, if you go back and read those, there's seeds and hints and plans of stuff that I'm still kind of
Not paying off
carving
yet.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm still playing with and everything. Yeah, it's fun. It's I don't know that if I would do it the same way again, but like with events and stuff, like with the case of Venom, it was just a case of the book it caught on with people, and people really were digging what we were doing, and the sales were really good. And so stuff like Absolute Carnage that like had the potential to kind of start spreading out and touching other corners of the universe and stuff.
Yeah.
Marvel comes to me and says, hey, do you want that to be the summer event? Or the same thing with King in Black. King in Black, I'm more like, I kind of pushed forward to be like a big event because I'm going to be covering the entire Earth with a symbiote. I'm going to be, killing the Sentry. I'm going to be doing like, Celestials are dropping down. That kind of thing is pretty hard to ignore.
True.
And so, yeah, but the thing is like, yeah, like what we were talking about is I always tell people like, I don't want, like, none of this stuff is ever a mandate. None of this stuff is ever like a hard and fast thing. Like, if you want to play, if you have a cool idea, if like, Chip was like, I think I have a cool way into the King in Black thing with Daredevil, actually, that would like kind of add some character and some fuel to what I'm doing. Be like, awesome, that's dope. I want everyone to come and play as much as they can. But then like you have stuff like, Hickman's doing this like grand magnum opus of X-Men and stuff, and he'd already, his ship had already sailed in one direction, and so I tried to steer clear a little bit and like put my toys back where I found them and stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's a fun time. Yeah, like you said, it's really fucking hard, but it's
Yeah.
it's worth it. These are toys that I tend to think at least are somewhat unbreakable.
Yeah.
They're obviously there's certain things that you can do that you can quote unquote ruin a character, but for the most part, these characters have stood the test of time for like 80 years, and so I tend to go into books thinking like, how far can we bend them before we break them, and just go for broke, because why not?
That's right. Exactly. Well, you're given the keys, and you're not going to tell a safe story. Like, you're not going to, you're given the keys to a convertible. You're not going to take the top down.
Right. Well, it all stems from like just like the kind of books that I always like really gravitated towards as a kid. Like, the reason that I tend to be like somewhat additive, introducing like new characters and new scenarios and stuff like that, as opposed to like, doing a new, like, if people read my work, you'll notice that like whenever I take on a character, I tend to not like really use their established rogues gallery for the most part. Like I've kind of played here and there, but it's because like we all know what happens when doctors or when like Doc Ock comes in to fight Spider-Man. Like we know kind of what that looks like. But like I remember when I was reading JMS's run on Amazing Spider-Man, and Moreland shows up. This is a guy you have absolutely no idea who he is. You have no idea what he's about. And he seems to just want to beat Spider-Man to death in the street.
Yeah.
And you're like, so every page turn, you're just like, oh my God, is he going to beat Peter Parker to death in the street?
Right.
And spoiler alert, yeah, he does. He just beats him to death in the street. Yeah. And
Yep.
so like that kind of stuff to me was so exciting and so thrilling and stuff, because it really, puts you on your back foot and really like puts you, in a new kind of scary place. So
Oh,
I tend to,
absolutely.
play,
Yeah, it keeps the readers guessing and keeps them on their
Right.
toes, and hopefully it keeps them buying the book, right? It
Right.
makes them
Sure.
want to
Yeah.
like see what's going to happen next. Brought up reading comics as a kid. Of course, I think we're pretty much the same age, and you grew up reading books because of your dad. He introduced them to you as a young age as a challenge, like to learn how to read.
Right. Yeah.
Which I thought was awesome. It's a great story.
Yeah.
I love that tether of like family to comics. What were some of the other comics that you read as a kid that you're like, I can't believe I got to play with this character? I mean, I love asking that kind of question with somebody who's like, I fucking invented Null, and you're asking me like, but like seriously, like what's like some characters you're like, oh boy, like I get to mess around with this character that I read or like wanted to write about as a kid, played with action figures, something like that.
The sheen never really wears off. Like, you obviously it's a job, and you go to work every day and you're, playing in Asgard, or you're playing with, the Hulk, or you're these things. And, it's really, really, really easy to just like get locked in and just be like, I'm at work and this is the thing I have to do today.
Yes.
I try to, as much as possibly, like kind of purposely tune out the magnitude of what I'm doing and what I'm playing with, because if I think too long about like how, these are threads that I'm playing with that were started with, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and stuff like that, I'll psych myself out totally. And I won't be able to move. But as far as characters I grew up in, like, I kind of have to pinch myself. I mean, really, every single time I get an opportunity to write Spider-Man, I freak out. Just like, remember the first time I ever wrote Spider-Man was in Doctor Strange, my final issue of Doctor Strange 381 or something like that. And I actually wasn't supposed to write that issue. Mark Waid was supposed to take over then. And so the issue before that, which was the end of Damnation, was meant to be my last issue. And I was kind of bummed about that, because I wanted an issue to say goodbye, because I did have a lot of fun on that run. But turns out Mark needed some more time. And so they wanted one more issue, and they were like, you can do whatever you want. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to write an issue of Spider-Man then.
Yeah.
And so, I got, Fraser Irving came in, and, Chip Zdarsky came in to do that little double page Calvin and Hobbes little Peter talks to a spider.
Yes. Thing. The spider story. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is something that I'm so incredibly proud of. It pops up all the time. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember firing up my laptop, and when you're doing like panel descriptions and stuff, and then you get to dialogue and you have to write their name out. And it was funny. Nick Lowe at the time pointed out to me that every character that I write, I would write when I'm writing dialogue, I would write their superhero name. I would write like Strange, or, Hulk, or like Thor, or Captain America, or whatever.
Yeah.
But with Spider-Man, I would always write Peter. And it's just, and it was something that was like so subconscious, because I love that character so much, and I grew up with him, and like he's like absolutely my favorite character in the world. And like putting words in that guy's mouth is always something that is really, 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 that I take really seriously and give a lot of deference and time to, because it's so important. Like, I'm willing to like take Venom and Thor and Hulk to really dark places, and really not afraid of like going pretty hardcore, like with Venom and stuff like that. But I tend to treat Spider-Man as much as like, I want kids to be able to see him and be inspired by him, and and like not be afraid of him. And,
right.
And, because he is such a big beautiful icon of a character. He's Marvel's Superman in that regard, which is always so funny to me that people are all like, Superman's so fucking boring and he's such a Boy Scout, and like, how do you write that where it's interesting? I'm like, Peter Parker, like
Yeah.
it's fine, it's super easy, like he's right there, like it's the same guy. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Spider-Man's always a big one for me. I love writing Loki. It's like maybe my favorite thing in the world to do is write him. It's one of the first characters, if not, I think maybe the first character I ever wrote at Marvel was Loki, because I started writing, even though Thanos came out first, I was writing Doctor Strange before that.
Yeah.
And my first issue of Doctor Strange starts off with this big monologue by Loki and stuff. And I found him incredibly hard to write at first, because when you're writing Loki, like every word out of his mouth has to be able to be taken three
Two
different
ways,
ways
yeah.
about like what his intention is and what he means and what it actually means, what the plan is and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Over the years, though, I've really grown very comfortable, and I really enjoy any opportunity I get to put him in Thor. I love their dynamic,
Yeah, absolutely. Which, of course, going back to like submitting characters to characters they haven't normally fought, you kind of made Loki a major Doctor Strange player as well. And their interactions are fun and different, and now he's like, they're synonymous, like in terms of like,
yeah,
Doctor Strange has a history with Loki as a result,
right? Yeah,
exposure.
it's fun. Like when you read like just recently in Thor, I guess it was, I don't know what arc it was. It was a Donald Blake arc. It was Prey, when Loki has to go and get, or Doctor Strange has to go and get Loki out of Dimension Blood, which, and when they see each other, they're very like Seinfeld and Newman with each other.
Strange, yeah.
And like with that interaction, like again, I'm referencing a relationship that I established years before in Doctor Strange. And also Dimension Blood, like that world is where they fought in the Doctor Strange run. Anytime that I have to do some like throwaway dimension that people get trapped in, or it's always Dimension Blood, and it's something that I just created, I pulled out of my ass in Doctor Strange. And if you go back through my entire history, starting in 2017 all the way up to now, there is a background story of Dimension Blood and the politics of that world that has evolved over all of my books. Every time I go back to it, there's some sort of a new ruler who is taken over, and is like they all got turned into bunnies for a while by Doctor Strange when he became the god of magic. And then when we go back to it, like I think it was in the first arc of Thor when he's fighting Beta Ray Bill. The opening of that issue is talking about how there was once a war where Thor fought for like a month straight without eating or sleeping or without tiring. And if you look at it, it's Dimension Blood. And like that's where he is. And he's forgotten all about it. And so then if you go back all the way to Doctor Strange, you can see the evidence of that war with Thor, and like why their realm is so fucked up and why they're so like desperate for food and stuff. It's because Thor fucked them up a million years ago. And then after Doctor Strange turned them into bunnies, when we see them again in the Prey arc, they talk about like how after the wizards came and fought there, and their enchantments wore off, like they've now been in a civil war because of like who's the leader now and stuff like that. It's just like this weird thing that I keep on going back to that no one has noticed. Like,
right, like it's for you. Like you're like, man, what's gonna happen?
Me.
Like one day there's gonna be like Revenge of the Blood Dimension, and it's gonna come out of left field.
Yeah, and if you like we all have those little things. Like Rosenberg, my best friend who was the best man at my wedding, if you go and read all of Matthew's work at Marvel, every single time that you interrupt a conversation, like two people are talking and we jump into a scene like mid conversation, they are without fail talking about how lame the Vulture is. They're always talking about like the ongoing joke is that no one really knows who he is,
right?
And they're like, it always cuts in and someone's like, and this old dude in a Big Bird costume showed up, and he was just screaming about something. I have no idea what his problem was. And then like Spider-Man will crash into the room or something like that. But like it's one of those things that like Matthew's like, I've been doing this for 5 years and no one has noticed that I've
No
been
one's
doing
picked up on
this.
the Vulture
Yeah,
conversation. Now here's
yeah.
the
And there's
question:
all
is it the same conversation but picked up at different points during the day?
it's always
Like,
the different characters. It's
okay.
always the different characters. Yeah. Yeah, I do shit like that all the time, and it's funny. Like Marvel fans especially are so observant and
Yeah.
like pick up on the slightest little nod or the slightest, more specifically, the slightest inconsistency in canon. They very much will let me know.
Yeah.
But there's so many hidden things that I've put into books that people have never picked up on ever.
Yeah.
It's always so much fun. Yeah, and as far as like the inconsistencies in canon thing, man, that is
Oh,
it's so funny. No, it's part of the gig. It's just that like what's funny is that there's gonna have to be a breaking point because um like at a certain point, like I'm doing Venom, right? It was
yeah.
easy for me to get the canon more or less like perfect and find my little in places of like where there was missing time in his story and
Yeah.
like fill in gaps and do a very kind of Jeff Johnsian rebirth kind of like
Oh, yeah.
making all the pieces fit together in a way that gets, you know, like
You
I
gave
was
him a
able to
son we never saw before, and
right,
it
yeah, yeah,
fits.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. And like there was an inconsistency in the canon that I fixed. Like there's this mention very briefly in the 90s Venom comics in a different book that Eddie Brock has a sister named Mary.
yeah.
And if you go back and read Venom comics, he for sure does not. He like
Him
we've
as a boy with
seen
his dad and growing
he
up, and
was in he
yeah.
was an only child, like it's very pointedly an only child.
Didn't his mother
And
die in childbirth, and that's why his
yes,
father hates
yeah,
him? Like, yeah.
yeah. It's a whole fucking thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've only ever seen his dad like in like 2 comics, and until I kind
Yep.
of fleshed him out a little bit more. And so like I was able to fix the whole Mary thing by having the symbiote lie to him and like implant memories and stuff.
Yeah.
But my point is that like with Venom, it's fairly easy because I've been alive for the entire time that Venom has been a character. So
Yes.
like I'm 37 years old. I was like 10 years old when I started picking it up. So I've literally read every single appearance. But like
Yeah.
when you're doing a book like Thor, you know, there's 60 plus years of Thor material. Like I'm not gonna know all of it.
No.
And like some of it just isn't gonna matter.
Right.
Like some of it, we're just gonna move ahead. You know, everything is down to story, and I will always, you know. Luckily, we have people at Marvel who are just encyclopedias. Like we have, like I can always call Mark Waid and ask him. Like he knows everything. I can always
Yeah.
call
Tom.
Tom Brevoort. Yeah, Tom, right? And he knows everything. And so, you know, like, but you know, if a story needs something to happen and someone goes like, well, there's an annual from 1965 that contradicts that on 3 panels, I'm going to be like, yeah, well, yeah,
Not anymore.
I'm
Or,
not anymore. Yeah,
you
like
know,
and like I tend to think that like not to put words in someone's mouth who can't be here, but I tend to think that like Stan Lee would go like, yeah, no, go just make a cool story. Yeah, just it's fine.
in
You
every
know?
interview you see with Stan, whenever they ask him like about, you know, when they pull him out and be like, "Hey, comment on this thing that you have no
Right.
context for," you know, like, what do you think? When they would ask him like, "What do you think about the new status quo of such and such?" He's like, "I think it's great. You know, good for them."
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
he was just happy that they're still talking about it. You know, he
Yeah.
didn't care.
Well, that's
Well, what?
that's kind of my stance on this kind of thing too. Is like, you know, there's things that are yet to be revealed in my Hulk run, but a lot of people were like directly upset at the jump that I wasn't picking up directly where Al left
Left
off,
off, yeah.
and seemingly things are different. I was kind of relate that to like Mark Waid's Daredevil run, where when it picks up, like Matt is happy and sunshiny, and his secret identity is back in the closet, and no one knows anything, and things are just weird. Like things
Yeah.
have just changed so much. And I remember people being like upset and being like, oh, so he's just gonna like reboot and ignore everything. But then like if you just give it a chance and read it, like Mark slowly unfolds this big grand reveal of like why everything is like that.
Yeah.
And so my Hulk run is very similar to that in that like people are gonna have to be patient. But like people were giving me kind of shit about it, and I was like, you know,
Yeah.
I guess I just don't share the same sort of outlook on these kind of things, because like, you know, for instance, like if Al had come on to Venom after, like, we both wrote essentially 50 issues of both of our respective titles, and then we just switched seats, you know.
Yeah.
And if Al had come on to mine and just completely ignored everything that I'd ever done, and like if Eddie woke up out of a dream and said like, oh, that Null thing was crazy anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
it wouldn't bother me at all. I don't care. Like that's not something that I hold a lot of value on. Like this idea of like, oh, it completely ruined this run. Well, no, it didn't. That run is still on the racks. It's right over there. Like
Exactly.
you can go and pick it up. Like
Yeah.
it's fine, you know.
Right. Right.
Like no one can take away the run that I did unless they get every copy of it and burn it and then like get on the servers and delete it, you know.
Yeah.
So I tend to not hold a lot of stake with that kind of thing. And I believe that everyone should have the same sort of like freedom on a title that I kind of do. Like I heard you say on one of the reviews
Yeah.
of my work that I tend to come on a book and take what everyone else did and say, fuck all that. This is mine now.
Yes, I did say that.
I think that might be a bit of an overstatement.
I think you're right. Yes, it's certainly hyperbolic. I mean, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like the approach is I'm doing my run now. You know, like if I were to restate that in a more complimentary way, I'd say Donny Cates unafraid to do his run the way he wants to. And yes, I did say that. And I do firmly believe that writers who are on a book that take over that book want to do their book, not
right.
Not pay homage to the book that came before. And I don't.
Well,
I say that with no judgment. Like I'm not saying like.
Oh no, I'm not mad at you.
Right? No, but I also I get
that
you get the same like you get criticism for making Hulk a starship. I get criticism for like saying that the Hulk is boring sometimes. Like it's the same level of anger. And
oh yeah.
And like,
no,
but I want to.
Yeah.
But there's no room for subtlety or nuance, and it's like I will say something, and you know how like people have to say, well, this is just my opinion, and it's like, well, you said it, so obviously it's your opinion. But like, but you need to, but apparently you need to distinguish like things that you say are not necessarily like you're not saying this is the world. I'm saying this is the world from my perspective, but like,
right.
But that's the new narrative now. Is like you have to like make sure that what I say is like understood to be in context of my opinion as opposed to it being like straight up fact, like the sky's purple.
Right. Well, to that point, I mean, context and intention actually do matter, and you know, that's something that the internet and Twitter especially has decided does not matter. Right. But it does. And you know, like I've gotten in trouble so many times for being on an interview and saying something stupid just to get a laugh, and then they print it up
onto it.
Well, you know, they type it out and they print it up and it looks horrible out of context.
Right.
You know. And so like, yeah, you guys are doing a show. I'm not mad about it, but
using that idea,
I do understand why people would kind of see it that way, but you know, I don't like it's a weird notion that is out there that writers take on books because they hate the character and they want to ruin something.
And that's the thing. Like I think that like certainly we didn't say that, and I think that, but I think there's an expectation. Yeah, there's because readers have an ownership of the book.
Yeah.
And when they ascribe that ownership, as you know, I'm not. By the way, I hope you know I'm not explaining this to you. I know you know that. Like, but
that's fine.
But like, you because I'm only being cautious because Donny and I have never spoken more than 2 words to each other in our past, so it's like we're still establishing a rapport. But like, the readers establish an ownership and an identity with that work, and I think that when that work shifts, it seems like it's an assault on their identity, and they get like really like personally upset, and it's like,
well, the thing is about that is that comics are such an insular and personal thing. It's not like a movie that you enjoy in a room with people. It's not like a sporting event. It's not like anything else. It's very much you go to the comic book shop and it's your personal taste, and then you come home and you are by yourself in this thing, and then if you've been doing that for 20 years, 30 years, most of your life. And in a lot of cases, it's something that your dad did or somebody in your family or your big brother did. And so it's a very personal thing. People get very used to an environment and it becomes for lack of a better term, it's been bastardized, a safe space for somebody. I mean, I certainly had that as a kid. Like my childhood was pretty rough, and going and leaving my world and being in Spider-Man's world was always something that was incredibly comforting. And then, if some cocky, arrogant asshole writer comes in and says, well, no, I'm going to tell my version of that. Like, the thing is that, like, when I come onto a book, I'm not trying to tell, like, I'm not trying to get rid of the thing that you love.
Right.
I'm writing the thing that I love. And like my version, for instance, with Eddie, like my version of that character that I love is him homeless on the streets and tortured by this thing and having incredible existential dread and crisis and stuff like that. And to me, Venom was a very scary book. Like, the character, it was inherently terrifying, and so I bent horror and I went in that way, right? The Hulk stories that I grew up reading were these fucking far out cosmic crazy things. The Thor that I grew up on was, I mean, my Thor is not, I don't think, that out of the norm of
that feels like a Thor book.
I mean, Thor has more in common with fucking Star Wars than it has with like Norse mythology. It's just about a space like wizard, right? And so it's fantasy sci-fi. But I mean, we as writers, like, this is our life. Like, this is what we dedicate our life to, and it's what I go to bed at night thinking of, and what I wake up in the morning thinking of. And the idea that I would take on that much of my life in order to ruin a character or hurt a character or to hurt anyone, my job inherently is, in a very weird way, an entertainer. Like, I want people to be entertained. I want people to be, emotionally touched by what I do, be it anger or sadness. I've always said that, art is not candy. It's not my job to solely make you laugh. It is my job to make you feel things. And so, I bristle somewhat against this notion that any writer, be it me or Dan Slott or anybody, like, sets out to intentionally hurt anyone. And like, it bums me out. Like, if someone just doesn't like what I do, like, that's totally fine. Like, you're never going to write something that is for everyone. And when you try to write something that is for everyone, you're going to write the most boring piece of shit in the world.
Totally.
When, you have an intent and a purpose and a voice and stuff, you're going to end up, you're going to end up with people who don't like it, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But when people, I can tell that someone legitimately feels like they're left behind or left out of a book, like, that sucks. Like, I don't ever want that. But at the same time, I've said it to people before, and it sounds like I'm being an asshole, but I don't mean it that way. Like, when I say to people, like, well, then, like, please stop reading it.
Right.
Like, I don't, like, it's not my intention to make you upset. And if, like, what I'm writing makes you physically upset and makes you feel bad about something, please, like, don't subject yourself to that. I don't, I don't understand why you would.
It's the nature of the fandom, and I think it represents a small portion of that audience, but it's a very vocal part of that audience, which is like, and I wonder, because as a person who came from the fandom into the medium, and knowing that like, especially if you were plugged in at all, if you like read Wizard or you read the letters
Oh
columns.
yeah, I
I know.
own every single issue. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk because I need a couple
Oh
of
yeah.
copies. But but if you're not that like meta about the medium, you don't necessarily even think about the creative teams behind them, and you
Sure.
certainly wouldn't ever have access to them. Like
Oh, right.
Wizard was like the arbiter, right? Like
Right.
there were institutions that kept like the gate from you and
Hmm.
access to the creator. That's gone today. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking to
Yeah.
Donny Cates right now. You know, it's like
Mhm.
that's where we are. One can have a reaction to a piece of work, get on their phone, and then send you a ping, right? Like,
Mhm.
whether they know you or not. Like, you'll get a
Mhm.
notification if you have them on that says, like, fuck
No,
you.
God, no.
Right? No, because you can't. But like, but if you're
Yeah.
right, but if you're only using it for like for business, like you could get a message
Yeah.
just like "fuck you," and you're like, "What?
Right.
Who's
Yeah.
this?" And it's like it's just a fan who's angry, and
Mhm.
they don't know like that there is like a break in the discourse. But
Mhm.
also, like, is there anymore? Because
Right.
there is no like rule book about
Well,
how we interact with each other now.
I certainly haven't made my life easier because I tend to be a little bit maybe more accessible than a lot of creators.
Yes,
I'm very front facing. Like I'm always on. I have like two podcasts I do a segment, and my wife. The Kids Love Change thing is always just my fucking face.
right.
You're always hearing me talk. I'm very like out there, and so I do think that there is a certain level of familiarity that people think that it's perfectly okay to write to me and say horrific shit to my face.
Right.
And I really, what's funny is that people think that I'm like getting into arguments all the fucking time and that I'm like responding to people all the time. What the
Right.
people don't see though is that I only ever like actually respond or get into it with like 1% of the amount of like crazy shit that I get. I
Sure.
ignore and block like 99% of it, but like sometimes, man, I just got to swing back and like
I know that
it's
feels.
I feel like some people are somewhat like taken aback when I do respond and respond negatively back to them,
Yeah.
because I do believe honestly that there's a skewed notion of social media that anyone who is some sort of a public figure, they
Is fair
register
game.
it. Well, yeah, it's fair game, but also I believe that there's somewhat of a notion that I'm never going to see it. Like
Right.
that I have like Lady Gaga's in Twitter that has like 40 million people, and
Or
you're
it's
just
never
never going to see
filtering.
it.
Right.
Yeah, or that like I'm not really, or like I have an assistant who runs these things and it's not
Yeah.
me, and like they're not really talking to me, they're talking to a picture of my face,
Yes.
and like
Yes.
I have 70,000 followers on Twitter. Like I'm gonna fucking see it. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to see it, and it's going to suck. And like especially when like people get shitty about me like personally as a human being and not my work. Like
That's
that
yeah.
is weird. And like I've had people send things to my house. I've
That's
had
that's terrifying.
terrifying. Yeah, it really is. I've had people send letters to every house that I have ever lived at, including the wife or my the house that my ex-wife lives at
Oh my
that I have
god.
never lived at. Like like they track down like every. It's wild.
Yeah.
And like people will attack my wife Megan. Like they
Yeah.
will go after her because of something that I did in Thor and stuff. And it's weird. It's very 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 weird, but it is to a certain degree part of the gig. It's
Right.
like you said, like it's not like the old days. It's not like the 90s or the 80s where people aren't accessible and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I put myself out there.
Well, and you have
I
to,
write.
right?
Yeah, it's part of the somewhat the infrastructure of making comics in the 2000s and like modern day age is that
Yeah.
it's not enough to just sell your books. Like you do have to somewhat. The market is so saturated, the market is so like filled with comics and
Yeah.
creators and stuff like that, that like if your goal like me especially is that I want to do my Marvel work and everything, but then I don't want to just sell Venom books. I want to sell Donny Cates books, and I want
Yeah.
people to then follow me over to my creator-owned books and to my other endeavors and stuff, you kind of have to make yourself into a brand.
Yeah.
And with that is that people treat you like a brand and not a person. And
Right,
so
right.
I do have to allow for a little bit of like I get it. Okay.
Yeah, but there's also that Texan in you that's like, don't fuck with me.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
like you get like because I think that there is this understanding. This I'm sorry, I really didn't want to make this show about like Twitter
Oh, no,
trauma
no,
at
fine.
you, but we're talking about it, so fuck it. But like
Sure.
but you are in a position where like you all are in a position where you have to manage your brand, you have to manage your identity, and because it's not just like you can't write Venom forever. You have to create like these other avenues, and as a result you have to put yourself out there. And I think there's others out there who are like, that's the nature of the beast, I'm gonna get shit on. And some folk are just able to take it, or they don't think, or maybe they think they deserve it, or whatever it is. But like there are very few, and maybe it's why people talk about like Donny Cates freaks out at fan, you know what I mean, like why you hear that. Because like there are so few who go like, hey, get fucked, and you're like, whoa, he responded. And that happens a lot. Like I'll get people who go like, I never expected you to respond. And it's like, and that's good or ill, by the way. That'll be like someone says like, hey, what issue is this? And I'm like, this is the issue. And they're like, ah. And and it's like, because they don't even think about it. Although I think those who are sending mail to people's houses, they're thinking about it a little too much.
Yeah. I don't know. I definitely have had instances where like people who are my friends who are in the industry and stuff will either call me or text me and be like, stop it. Stop telling people to go fuck themselves on Twitter. And I'm like, all right, sorry.
But then you'll see one and you're like, oh no, but this guy though.
I know. I will say it is a failing within me that I have an overabundance of a sense of justice, where I do think sometimes that I'm like, I have to set this person straight, or especially if someone's just like outwardly like lying about me. And like just like attaching meanings to things that I write that are horrific and hateful, or out of bounds for something that I would actually think or conduct myself as. Those things tend to bother me. But enough about this Twitter horse shit. I spend enough time dealing with Twitter. Let's not talk about Twitter. Let's talk about fun stuff.
Let's talk about Spider-Man some more, because he's so beloved. Is Spider-Man too precious to you? Like where you're like, so because you're in Humans book. I know that they were like, just make them relevant, and you were like, all right, here's this crazy thing, like do whatever. If they said to you, take Spider, when the people who are working on it, who are great creators and we respect them and all that stuff, when your time is up, and they say, hey, do whatever you want with Spider-Man, would you go, no, you can't just tell me do whatever I want with Spider-Man, that's too big?
No, not at all. I definitely treat Spider-Man with a little bit of kid gloves right now, because it's not my character. It's not my place to put Peter through the ringer right now.
Like out of his book,
it's not my job. It's Venom is fair game when it's my book. Thor is fair game when it's my book. And we all, it's a kind of an unspoken agreement that we do with each other as writers and stuff, that, no one really steps on. And like, I don't know, like the people, never mind, not going to get into it. People sometimes think that like something that I do with a character is like me firing a shot over someone's a bow. It's just like, no, dude, we're all friends. Like if I do something with Captain America, like rest assured I talked to the writer of Captain America and we discussed it, and it's totally fine. Like it's fine. And like vice versa with like, if Jason does something with Thor in Avengers, like we've had a conversation about it. Like it's fine.
Totally.
But when it comes to Spider-Man, like, if I were to ever be on the book, then I mean, I believe I'm quoting Dan Slott when I say that the worst thing about writing Spider-Man is that when you're the writer of Spider-Man, you have to be mean to Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And it sucks, and that's your job. You got to put him in the worst situations humanly possible. That's how heroes, that's how we know that they're heroes, is they keep on getting up. And especially in the case of Peter Parker, that is the thing that we love about him the most, is that he's not the strongest guy in the room. He's not the most powerful guy in the room. His real superpower is that he always gets back up.
Right.
And that's what we love about him. But your job is to knock him down as hard as humanly fucking possible.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would. I mean, I have some plans. Should that ever happen?
Right, of course. Yeah, in this hypothetical
yeah.
scenario, which I did
Yeah.
deliver, I'm not trying to get at anything, but yeah.
No, I know that that's something that I've seen a lot of fans talk about, that they would, that they would like to see me take a swing at it. And to that I would say, I mean, it's, careers are long and Spider-Man's not going anywhere.
Right.
I've only been at Marvel for like 7 years.
Yeah.
I've only been writing comics for 10. So like, God almighty, I've already written like half the pantheon at Marvel. Like, I'm not in any hurry to get to the top of the mountain just yet. I mean, because like after you do Spider-Man, like what do you do? I mean, it's the greatest character in all fiction,
Yeah, no. It's funny, I thought about, every time I think about Spider-Man and people saying like, oh, Donny Cates's run would be amazing, all that stuff. People were inundating Chip Zdarsky with that just recently, and I keep going back to him where he's like, I don't want to fucking write Spider-Man. Like, do you know how many eyes are going to be on me if I wrote Spider-Man? Like it goes through. It's Mickey Mouse. Like I can't just tell my story. It's through a whole thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty scary. Like, it's probably why he's enjoying Daredevil so much. That's why you get to have so much fun with like Venom. Like it's like, oh, take Venom and run with him. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the farther up the food chain you go, definitely there are more eyes on it. Like, going from a character like Venom to Thor, like for instance, like Thor, is obviously in the films and like is part of like that bigger kind of picture.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, you do like find yourself all of a sudden getting notes from Kevin Feige. You're like,
oh,
whoa, fuck. Okay, yeah, Jesus. Okay, buddy, yeah. And that's a whole different ball game. And then, yeah, when you get to the guy whose picture's on the checks, who's in the Macy's Day Parade, like, yeah, I'm not afraid of it though. Like, it doesn't scare me at all. Like, that's just look, I mean, growing up, for good or for ill, I was raised with a saying. And my dad would always say to me whenever I would tell him some lofty, insane goal that I wanted to do, like I wanted to be an actor, or I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, or I wanted to be the lead singer of a rock band, or any like the crazy shit that I wanted to do. If he ever heard me doubt myself and be like, yeah, I mean, there's no chance that that's going to happen to me, my dad would always say the same thing. He would say, well, it's going to be someone. Why not you? Like, it's going to be like someone is going to be the next writer of Spider-Man. So why not? Like, it's, why not? Why not go for the gold? And like growing up as the biggest Venom fan in the world, when I got to Marvel, like, like I was saying earlier, I planned out like that, like 5-year story and stuff. And to me, it was, I am like such a living embodiment of like that joke that people say, like, grant me the confidence of a privileged white man. Like I just walked into that room and I was just like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to have a 5-year run on this character and it's going to be successful. Like, why wouldn't it be?
Right.
And like, certainly I've failed. And like, certainly I have written stuff that people fucking hated that I thought was awesome at the time. Certainly I have a long way to go as far as like, I'm still working on my craft. I'm still trying to get better with everything I do. I'm still learning. I'm still taking classes. I'm always striving to be better. But if tomorrow they offer, like, let's not use Spider-Man as an example because that's the company I worked for. Like, if tomorrow, if I was an employee or a freelancer at DC, and tomorrow they were like, "Hey, it's your turn on Batman,"
Yeah.
I would just do the best I could. I would just dive into it and be like, "This is what I want to do."
Yeah, no fear. It's not like it's too big.
Yeah,
he's too big. That's too much.
It's a lesson that I learned when I was doing Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, it was my first assignment, and it really fucked me up because I was taking over for Jason Aaron. And Jason Aaron's my favorite writer in the world. Like, he like way back when I was like a retailer and I ran like 4 different comic book stores and stuff. Anyone who walked in, I would put Jason Aaron books in their hand and just be like, this dude doesn't miss. Like this, like anything that he writes, if his last name is on it, it's a fucking banger.
Yeah.
And it's a huge fan of his Doctor Strange run. And
it was great.
Like, I was still very much a fan and like not working at Marvel when that run was going on. And I would go to my comic book shop every week and I would pick up the Doctor Strange by Jason Aaron. And then I get this call from Axel. It's a long story, but we need you on Doctor Strange. Fuck. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And really psyched me out. I actually moved out of my house for a while and moved into a hotel to not have any distractions, and like tried to craft my pitch, and everything that I wrote was like such an extension of what Jason was doing. And I was like trying to sound like Jason, and I was trying to do all this stuff. And one of my best friends, I called him and I was talking to him about it. And he said this thing to me. He goes, well, if they wanted the book to sound like Jason would be writing it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And he was just like, they want it to sound like you.
Right.
And I was like, fuck. Okay. Yeah. Like, if you hire me, like, it's going to sound like me. And so if you read my Doctor Strange run, I very purposely wrote this first panel of the first issue that I had to write before I could move on. The first panel, the first page of my Doctor Strange run is a shot of the Sanctum Sanctorum, and it has a sign on it that just says "under new management."
Yeah.
And I had to write that just to say, like, just as like a calling card of like, hey, this isn't Jason. Like, this is me. And for good or for bad, it's going to sound like me. And so, I don't know what that means. I don't know what a Donny Cates book sounds like. I guess having listened to you guys' channel and having like listened to you guys describe my books for a month now, it seems like I just invent big space monsters and put the word black in things. I did.
There's also a tether to family in there somewhere, but
yeah. I really didn't. It is it's one of those things that, like, the books that you guys have reviewed are like have been written over the course of years.
Exactly.
But then, like, when you do line them up, I was just like, I do use the word black a lot. I do. Wow.
Right.
Huh.
But the thing is, it works.
Space monsters and black. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. And so, no, it's good. Everyone has their own little ticks and stuff. We
do the same thing. We talk about how every Scott Snyder book opens with a big long story about a big long history lesson about something that happened that parallels what's going to happen later. And and he's like, oh, I do that? Yeah, I guess I do.
Yeah. There was actually going to be a segment in Crossover that I ran out of time with, where Ellie and Ryan were going to be in a comic book store, and they were going to be talking about their favorite authors. And as you turn the page and they mentioned a new author, I was going to do a direct impersonation of that writer. And so, like, they would be like, do you like Tom King stuff? And then you turn the page and it would just be a 9-panel grid of silence. Yeah. And then on the last panel, he would be like, yeah, he's pretty good.
Right.
And then like who else? I was going to do like them being like, well, what about Kirkman? Do you like him? And it was just going to be a double page spread of just a giant face going, yeah, he's pretty good. Again, big, bold letters,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then like Scott Snyder, you would turn the page and they'd be like, I do like Scott. My father once told me when I was a little kid that.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And then you would do Jason Aaron. Like, Jason Aaron likes lists. He likes to like when he writes the descriptions of things. He likes to like named them like 9 times, and then like
Yes.
he's just like filled with ideas. He like can't stop himself of like putting dope shit on the page,
Yeah.
which is something I definitely stole from him.
If it
But
works.
we all have our little ticks and stuff. And I don't know where I was going with this, but I guess I was gonna say I don't know what constitutes a Donny Cates book. I don't know what that means, but I'm always, like I said, I'm always trying to change. I'm always trying to evolve. I hope I'm not repeating myself as much as possible. But
yeah,
when you write 7 books a month, and sometimes I'll admit, like sometimes when you got your head up against the wall and life is insane and you're on a deadline and stuff, you do kind of look at a script and you go, well, I do know what works,
right.
and like, and it is like really easy to like fall back on stuff. Like for instance, when I did Thanos, I did Doctor Strange, and I think one other book, but I'm having trouble finding it now.
Guardians.
Well, no, I'm going into Guardians. So like, when I got Guardians, I was looking back at my work, and I was like, man, I use captions so much. Like I use caption work, and I use like this third person omniscient narrator that like is a style that I love so much that is not used as much anymore. When like I remember when Thanos came out and I was on Twitter and someone was confused and they were like, hey, I have a question, like who's telling the story? Like, who's talking? And I just wrote back and I was like, me.
Right.
Like I'm telling you the story,
Yeah. Was it Thanos with the narration is like more conversational, more like fun? Because I'm trying to think if it was Thor or Thanos, where there was one where it's like it's a lot more like
at times Thanos is like that. Like it kind of it vacillates. Like
I think it is Thanos.
I would do like a big kind of like speech about the nature of infinity, and then like how Thanos his mother would go insane, and then it would like just immediately cut to like, anyway, he killed her when he was 12.
Right.
Moving on. Like it was just stuff like that. It was just like, I just amuses me. But then like when I went to Guardians, I was just like, all right, I'm gonna try and do an entire book with no caption work. I'm gonna try and try that style out. And it was the dumbest thing I could have ever done because on a team book, when you need to be able to cut between characters and like cut things, like captions really fucking help.
Yeah, it's just a tool in the belt. Like
And so I tried, and I don't think it's my best work. And like I've very publicly said that team books are not my forte. Death of the Inhumans is like an anti-team book because I just murder all of them. And so dope. By the time I get to Spider-Man, who knows what the fuck that'll look like? Like
that's true.
Who knows if I ever get to Spider-Man? I should say, like who knows what that style will look like? Like like what things I'm reading that are influencing me? Like what especially like what does the medium favor right now? Like the curse of the writer sometimes is that writers we have there's like pros and cons of being a writer versus being an artist. Like the pro is that you can work on multiple different projects at once and you don't get like pinned down. A pro of being an artist is if the book sucks, no one's going to be mad at you. They're always going to be mad at me. But one of the cons of being a writer is that like your particular vernacular and your style can totally just go out of favor. And no fault of your own. So you do have to stay on your game and adapt and like change. And like, someone like Grant is really good about that. Like Grant has stayed modern. Like he sounds modern, like no matter what he's on, and there's like other writers that definitely, when you read like their current stuff, they're like, oh, like you, like that's a style that is like from a previous era, and so like there's always also the possibility that by the time that book was offered me, the style that I read in, it's just like people just don't fucking like that anymore. I
don't see that happening, but I do hear what you're saying. I mean, I remember reading that when Jerry Conway jumped on Carnage, and I was like, I read Carnage, like, and I would go, who wrote that? And I'm like, holy shit. Like the dude who killed Gwen Stacy wrote this Carnage book, and it's cool. Like, and it's modern.
Jerry Conway's awesome,
right?
It was awesome.
But no, it's. I wouldn't worry about it.
I'm
Because
not
it's
right now.
yeah,
It's just it's about like you have to kind of stay in the zeitgeist and like stay aware of current trends and like
right.
stay aware of like so I'm like constantly on Twitter asking people like, hey, what do you guys like right now? Like, what do
Yeah,
you like? What's cool? Like, what's the new thing? And I go and try and read that thing and see kind of like where the
where the winds are
go
going.
where the go where the puck's going, as it were.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Since we're winding down, I figured I'd ask you a couple of fun questions that came from Wizard Magazine because
Oh,
there
let's
is no
do it.
wizard. I
Fuck
did
yeah.
this the other day, so why not? At the end of the magazine where like they had like
Yeah.
that profile.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna lift it because it's 30 years old. Fuck it. So
Awesome.
here we go.
Okay.
Favorite comic of all time?
Ooh. Comic of all time. Alan Moore's Miracle Man. Absolutely. It's a book that, funny enough, Wizard Magazine. When I was like a teenager, they put out this list of, it was called like the top greatest books of all time that you will never own.
Yeah,
And number one, because they were like all like out of print or
they
like
were out of print.
banned or something
Yeah.
like that.
Uh huh.
And Miracle Man was the number one. And just that article, I became obsessed with finding it.
Yeah.
And in 2007, I was working at a comic book shop. I was the manager of this comic book shop, and I saved up and I saved up and I saved up and I spent like $800 buying the entire run original print.
Oh
I still have
no,
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because then Marvel gets it.
And then in 2010 they got it. And what's funny is I was an intern at Marvel when that news came out, and I was like at intern alley at my computer, and I was like, "Fuck, what?" And
Yeah,
like,
I
and
really need
so,
that
but
$800.
well, it's great though now because I can recommend it to friends and stuff and just be like, no, you can just go find the trade now. But that
That's
because
right.
that was not a reality,
No.
and like I own like every Miracle Man thing that is humanly possible to own. I own all the statues, all the toys. I actually
You have
own
the McFarlane
and
statue?
oh yeah, absolutely. I can't tell you how I acquired this, but I actually own the script from Alan Moore's typewriter for one of the issues of Miracle Man that he sent to like Gary Leach to draw,
Wow.
and it has Gary Leach's
Notes.
like doodles and like layouts and stuff. Yeah, I have it like in my bookcase over
That's
there.
awesome.
And now Miracle Man is at Marvel at the same time that I am. And
Yeah.
when really quick, and I know that we want to get to questions and stuff, but just
No, please.
I'll end by saying this. When we all found out that we had acquired Conan,
Yeah.
it was an unspoken thing in this big email thread that we had with like every Marvel like exclusive writer, people who were at the summits and stuff, that we were all just like getting out of the way for Jason. We were
Right.
like, if any of us try and lay claim on this, Jason will murder us.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is Jason's,
Mm-hmm.
And so everyone kind of knows with Miracle Man
Yeah.
that like if it ever comes loose, if that ball ever comes loose into the Marvel court, I will kill someone.
Yeah.
Like it is mine.
I am like they teased it at the end of a very recent thing, and I think a lot of people are like, because it was out of print for so long, a lot of people are kind of like, Miracle Man is like this mystical thing that they never really even got exposed to,
Right? Yeah.
but they know it existed. I
Yeah.
wonder what a Marvel Miracle Man would look like.
Yeah, well, that's what's interesting, right? Is because the character of Miracle Man by itself is not inherently interesting. It's
Right.
like the character of Miracle Man of Mickey Moran is just a ripoff of Captain Marvel,
Exactly.
like of Shazam. That's what it
Yeah.
was designed to do. And what's interesting about Miracle Man is not the character; it's what has been done with the character and the unique space that that character finds himself in.
Exactly.
And what's unique about that space is that it's a world without superheroes. It's a
Right.
world where there are no, there's no one who's superpowered. There's no one like that idea is so abstract. It only exists in the world of comic books.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, for anyone who hasn't read Alan Moore's Miracle Man, a lot of the ideas that he would go on to kind of flesh out more in Watchmen, he first kind of tackled in Miracle Man. the kind of idea of the deconstruction of the modern superhero he tackled first in Miracle Man / Marvel Man when it was originally printed.
Exactly.
And so how do you deconstruct that character in a world of miracles? I don't know. I don't know how you do that. But I'm game to try.
Yeah.
That's
really, that's just, the possibility is really cool. I remember seeing that and just being like, I remember when Joe Quesada drew that big splash when they got the character. I'm like, what is going to happen? Yeah, it is a great drawing.
Yeah, it's a great drawing.
Next one. What's your favorite work of your own?
Oh God.
I know. You got to be complimentary. It's got to.
I'm so bad at this. For as much as people paint me with this brush of being an egotistical douchebag, I tend to hate all my own shit. Let me see.
Do you want to split it up? Really, be like indie and Marvel?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. I was gonna say on the indie side, I'm really proud of Baby Teeth. What's funny is that I'm known so much for these big like Michael Bay 90s like action things.
Yeah.
But really, if you were to look at like my library, like the books that I actually read, like the things that I hew closer towards are like Strangers in Paradise. And like The Crow, and like these like very like kind of quiet, poignant kind of like relationship drama kind of things. And so Baby Teeth was my effort to kind of do my version of that. Now, obviously, my version of that involves the Antichrist and Satan as Gerard Way.
Yes.
But I really enjoyed writing. I tend to cry a lot when I write books. If I'm writing something that is really fucking heavy and really emotional, like I've written God Country twice now because I wrote the book and then I wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
And both fucking times, like Megan, my wife would find me in my office just being like, God damn it. And she'd be like, Are you at the Emmett scene? I'm like, yeah, I'm at the Emmett goodbye scene. So yeah, Baby Teeth and God Country both I'm very proud of. God Country holds a bigger place in my heart because it's the only reason I'm here. Like it's the only reason that like Marvel ever noticed me,
Right.
And so, and then on the Marvel side, quite like Thanos Wins. That was really fucking fun to write. Just to be nakedly evil for a while was so much fun. And to begin a story off with the knowledge of I'm not interested in redeeming this guy.
Right.
Like he's just going to be fucking evil. And then the challenge becomes, how do I get the audience to root for this guy?
Yeah.
And so that was a really fun challenge and really fun. That and Venom, obviously Venom changed my fucking life. And so he's my favorite character, so I'd say that. I'm listing like everything I've ever fucking written. So yeah, I know.
I mean, it's good.
Well, thank you.
Superpower you'd like to have?
Yeah. I always go towards. Now, when you say superpower, am I allowed to say like an object that would give me powers?
Sure. Yeah. Let me hit you with this. No. You could pick like a gemstone that makes you into a wolfman or flight. It's a superpower, something that makes you above human.
Okay. So I would say teleportation is way the fuck up there.
Yeah.
Because like when you think about obviously like the limitations of things, you kind of have to like add in like with flight, you're gonna have some sort of invulnerability because it's fucking cold and there's no oxygen up there.
Right.
And people are gonna find you so fast. With teleportation, I tend to skew towards the Nightcrawler view of it. Of like, I have to have been there first. I have to be able to see it in my mind.
Yeah.
Because you're going to teleport into a fucking wall.
Exactly.
But the answer is obviously the Green Lantern ring. That's obviously like the best answer in the world.
Because it can do anything, basically.
You can fucking do anything. You can have all the powers that you want.
Yeah. You can fly. You can. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think I mean, flight's pretty fucking dope, but again, like it's only gonna last for so long. Like you're gonna
That's
get shot
true.
out of the sky by the government so fast.
Yeah. What was your favorite toy you had as a kid?
Good question. That badass Batwing that had the pistol grip.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
With the
Yeah,
clamps
it's
in the
so
front,
fucking cool.
if you trigger it, you can grab Joker. Yeah.
So fucking cool. And then I had the Star Trek teleporter where you like push the little button and it went across and it was like a magic trick and then they weren't there anymore.
Yeah.
What's funny is I wasn't even a Star Trek kid. I never watched Star Trek, but the toys were so fucking cool. And then like later on,
didn't you write a Star Trek book?
Yeah. And then later on, I would go on to write Star Trek. And when they emailed me and asked me if I wanted to write Star Trek, I replied back with like, I would love to, but I've never seen Star Trek. I don't know anything about it. And they were like, well, we don't hire the biggest fans. We hire the people we think are the best for the job. And so,
good answer.
If you read my scripts for them, and maybe this would be fun to like put on my Substack. My scripts are like, I watched like 3 episodes of TNG that had Data and Geordi, just to get their voices. And
you got them, by the way. I was just reading that the other day, and I was like, you really nailed the voice of Geordi. Like that's the response. Dude. I was like, wow.
Thanks, dude.
not to trek out or anything, but I was like, wow, that's But anyway.
People are always very surprised that I don't know anything about what I'm talking about with those characters. I'm a good mimic. I can always like pick up things. But my scripts just say like, I'd be like panel 1, some kind of fucking spaceship comes into this area and and then like the people with the Star Trek licensing office and stuff loved me because they got to interact with it and they got to like email me and nerd out and be like, I think that a Vulcan Raptor would be like the perfect thing to put in here, and I'd be like, fucking
go
tight, awesome, whatever. I don't know what that means, but
that's amazing.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. Last time you went trick-or-treating, you went as
Morticia Addams.
You went as Morticia? That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Megan was Gomez.
Love it.
And I was Morticia. You can find pictures of it on my Instagram. And I am a fucking hot chick. It's crazy. It is fucking wild.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Beautiful.
And this is just one for us, but it's what's one question you always want to have asked, but no one ever asks you?
Oh my God. I don't know, man. Everyone asks me everything all the time.
I know. Well, like, how dare you? And who do you think you are?
Yeah, right. Yeah. How are you? I think I would like that. No. God, I don't know. I have no fucking clue. I don't think I know the answer to that one. Because it's what we were talking about earlier is that like there doesn't seem to be any sort of barrier whatsoever with me. People tend to just think they can ask me anything they want all the time. So I'm such like an open, and I'm an idiot because I oftentimes answer it. Right. And so I just fuel it. People get, I don't know. I like to be asked about stuff that's not comics. I like, because like, believe it or not, like I do have like a whole life like outside of this job.
Oh yeah.
And like, like I remember like when I was getting married, I would put up like pictures of like, Megan's in her beautiful dress and like showing like, pictures of me and Matthew in our tuxes and stuff like that. And like people would like in the comments, like ask me like who would win in a fight between Venom or like, they'd be like, are you going to have a Venom, cake at your wedding and stuff? And I'd be like, guys, no, fuck. I have a whole thing outside of this. Now I will say this, without my knowledge, the chef at the restaurant did make me a Venom cake because I think that he didn't know who we were and like why this restaurant was being completely shut down for us. Because we got married at Luca during the con there, which I know goes against my whole I have a life outside of this thing. Yeah. I know, but we were getting married on Halloween because we're nerds, and Luca invited us to that show. And I responded back to them. I was like, thank you for the invite, but we're actually getting married here. And Megan and I were just going to go down to the courthouse. And they responded back with, well, if you come here, you can get married in City Hall. The mayor will marry you. We'll shut down an entire restaurant for you. We'll pay for you to come out here. We'll pay for your wedding, and we'll pay for your honeymoon.
Holy shit.
And I was like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, fucking let's go. Let's do that. And so I don't like this like 5-star like restaurant in Italy was completely shut down just for us and our wedding party. And I'm sure the chef had no idea. He was like, is fucking Matt Damon here? Why are we doing this? You know? And so I'm sure he like looked up who I was. And if you Google me, Venom obviously is the first thing that just like is everywhere. And so when our cake came out, it was like this like 4-layer thing, and the bride and the groom on it were me and Venom. And like Venom was like the symbiote was overtaking it, and that part was chocolate. And when it came out, I just put my head in my fucking hands. And Rosenberg is next to me. And he's just like, this is the funniest, fucking greatest thing that's ever happened. Because Rosenberg knows how much, like, when I'm clocked off, I'm fucking clocked off.
Exactly.
You know? I don't want to be the Venom guy.
Right.
Like, I'll say this, like last night, so I'm a bachelor right now because my wife is out of town. Last night, I did our KLC Press live stream, which I want to make sure I plug our Substack. Go to klcpress.com. It's Stegman and I's Substack. It's it's fucking awesome. You can get previews of our new entire like line, our entire imprint of image books. Behind the scenes, you see my scripts, you see his art. If you sign up for a couple of our tiers, you get exclusive variants before they come out that are exclusive only to Substack people. Go to klcpress.com. Anyway, I was doing the live stream, and Megan was calling me during the live stream. She called me like 4 times, and it's very unusual for her. She normally just texts me, and especially like when she's in Reno snowboarding with her girlfriend, like she's fucking snowboarding.
She's not
like,
calling you, she's snowboarding.
She's having fun. And so I just texted her, and I was just like, hey, I'm on, I'm on camera, so I can't. And so I got off, and sure enough, Megan broke her wrist snowboarding. And she was in the hospital.
Oh shit.
And she's okay. The biggest drag of it is that it's her drawing hand.
Oh no.
I know. Yeah. So it's gonna be like 3 weeks to a month that she's not gonna be able to fucking draw. It sucks.
That sucks.
But so I put this up on Instagram, and because she can't type, I just was like telling people like, hey, send her, get well soon. Like, and it's pictures of my wife in the hospital. It's like pictures of her absolutely shattered wrist that's like all like swollen up, and then pictures of her getting a cast. In the comments, a guy goes, so who do you think is stronger, Thor in his All-Father form, or Hulk in his like World Breaker? And then I just responded, and I was like, bro, this is a post of my wife in the hospital.
Right.
Are you out of your mind? And he responded back like, oh, I'm really sorry, but could you answer the question? I was like, oh my God. And I deleted his comment. I was just like, this is what I'm saying. Like, people cannot get their head around the fact that I have a whole fucking life like outside of this. But again, it is what it is, so I forget what the question was, but
but we didn't get a chance to talk about the Substack thing, but it's very exciting. I know that like you're doing I know when talking to Ryan, he's like he's really like keyed into the image scene, and he kind of like he has this like whole like approach that he wants to see, and I assume you do as well, because like you grew up on image books as well as so how much, speaking to your planning, how much planning is going into like this new endeavor?
Oh, it's a huge thing. I mean, we have Vanish by Ryan and I, and The One You Feed, which is by Dylan Burnett and I, who did Interceptor and Reactor with me, and Cosmic Ghost Rider with me. And then we have Flood, which is by me and Megan. It's a weird underwater Western horror thing. And then we have like spin-offs of Vanish. We have new projects coming from Ethan and Griff, our Supple boys.
Yes.
Have maybe some surprises that we can't talk about yet. And then like loads of things that we haven't talked about. It is a like full-on like publishing imprint that will not only have things written by me. It's going to have a full range of things that are kind of live in the world that we're kind of building out there. And yeah, we're kind of treating it like the downside of doing an image book is that it does kind of take you off of the stands and out of the news feed for a certain amount of months while you're building a project.
Yeah.
Now, as a writer, it's not really a problem for me. Like I have my Thors and my Hulks and things like that.
Yeah.
But for someone like Ryan or Dylan Burnett or Megan, when you're dedicated to putting these things out, you're kind of nose to the grindstone and you're kind of not in the public eye.
Yeah.
And so KLC is a great place to just display and kind of just show people what we're building as we build it. So if you come over there, you're going to see like once a week we get together and we record a bunch of like video podcasts where we talk about all manner of things, like the newest episode of Boba Fett and the Spider-Man films, and then we get into like what's like project updates, and we show Ryan's pencils to the inks to the colors to everything, and Dylan's pencils and all that kind of stuff. Interviews with Megan and I review books and stuff. So it's just like a whole cool little world that if you're fans of us or any of the stuff that we do, it's just like kind of being invited into how we like to think about it is in the 90s in Wizard magazine, we always saw those rad offices, those studios.
God, yes.
They had like the giant Badrock statues and like Life Lee was over here and Jim Lee was over here and Jim Valentino was over there and like all this shit. And to be able to be in those studios and to be able to like see what was going on and hear people argue and hear people come up with cool ideas and stuff like that. How rad would that be? And that's what KLC is. You're essentially stepping into our studio and watching us build stuff in real time. Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and you get a lot of really rare and exclusive perks that you can only get by subscribing to klcpress.com.
There you have it. Well, Donny, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Absolutely,
I really appreciate you being here. Check out his stuff. Obviously, you probably already are at some point, but definitely check out that website because I'm actually subscribed and
thank you.
It's legit. Like I check it out. It's fun.
Thank you.
But we'll see you guys next time with another episode, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Oh, one follow-up question: how are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you. How are you?
Can't complain.
Awesome.
So long, everybody.